Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Rachel and I am knitting. Not right now, but most of the time. And I recently finished knitting this green ranunculus. I knit this in Cascade 220. This is a non-superwash worsted weight wool yarn. That's a mouthful. And I'm so happy with it. I am just thrilled with it. So I am going to block it. I figured I would take you along for the ride and show you my blocking process. So let's go do it. Oh, but first I guess I should show you, this is what it looks like before blocking. You might notice that the yoke is not really fully bloomed. It's not really laying flat. It's kind of bumpy, kind of cinched in some places and looser in others. So what blocking is going to do is going to help relax the fibers and make them lay nicely, have the lace stitches bloom so the texture of the yoke stands out even more, and it will just make this a much more, in my opinion, streamlined and more professional looking finished object. If you have never blocked before, I highly recommend it. I knit for years before I blocked, and I'm so glad that I have this in my toolkit. It is a vital piece of the making process, in my opinion. I'm sure some of you watching this will be thinking this is a no-brainer, you've done this for years, and others will be new to blocking. So if you're new to blocking, I would definitely encourage you to give it a shot and let me walk you through it. It doesn't have to be scary. Ultimately, it's the simple process of soaking your finished object and laying it flat to dry. So it doesn't have to be scary, and I'll help you go through the process. The first thing I'm gonna do is take this off because I'm not gonna block it on my body. I'm gonna take it off and I'm going to soak it in some lukewarm water with wool wash. I have several different kinds of wool wash. I'm not sure which one I'll use today. We'll find out together in a minute. But essentially, wool wash is a delicate cleanser, and many of them do not require rinsing. So what that means is you can soak your garment or your hat or your blanket or whatever it is you're blocking. You can soak it in the water with your wool wash without needing to rinse that cleanser out of the garment. Rinsing is not required. So this is maybe not the case with all wool washes, but it is true for the wool washes I use and the wool wash I will end up using today because that's the only kind I have. So it's my preference, and I'll link all the things that I use and that you might need for blocking in the video description box. So let's get going. I ended up deciding to use my Euclid jasmine scented delicate wool wash. Euclid is a great brand for your wool wash. It comes in several different scents. I have tried jasmine and lavender. They even have an unscented one. They have a eucalyptus one I really want to try, but I don't think I have tried it yet. Something that's really nice about the Euclid brand is that it's highly concentrated. So you might not need as much of this as you would for a comparable wool wash, but I like it so much that I use the same amount as if I were using a different wool wash. So you can block in your sink or in a bucket. I have this little petty tub, so I'm just gonna go ahead and use that. It's clean. I'm going to put a swirl of wool wash in there. And now I'm going to fill this tub up with lukewarm water. Okay, so that tub has enough in there. I have to be mindful of the temperature of that water because since I'm in Louisiana and it's so hot right now, the tap water comes out pretty warm. So I just have to be mindful of that, especially since this is a non-superwash wool, meaning it is not treated. So it will felt with heat and agitation. And I don't want this to felt. So I want to make sure this is not hot water. This is a little warm just because of the pipes are warm, but it is okay for our purposes here. I'm gonna go ahead and put my garment in my little tub. And non-superwash wool is naturally a little water resistant. So this is a great option for garments that will be outerwear, like jackets or hats if you live in a really snowy or wet climate. But since it is naturally water resistant, it's going to take a while for my garment just to soak in. So I'm going to go ahead and give it some assistance and just push it down a little bit to submerge it in my wool wash soaking situation. I'm gonna leave this in here for 20 minutes. You could gauge this depending on what your garment or finished object is. 20 minutes is a good spot for me. I usually do that no matter what it is. And that just gives time for the water to penetrate each of these stitches and helps the garment absorb the water. In basically doing that, basically giving it that time allows the garment to absorb the water so that every stitch is saturated and gets the benefit of that wool wash solution and the water to help the stitches bloom and the fibers relax. So we'll leave this here for 20 minutes and then come back and see where we are. Okay, it's been 20 minutes and you might be able to tell that this is completely soaked through. The garment has absorbed a lot of water, and that 20-minute timer is so important. You can't just dunk your garment in and pull it out and call it good. You do need to soak it to make sure every single stitch absorbs that water and is fully saturated. So now in the blocking process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift up the garment out of this water, and I'm going to gently squeeze as much water as I can. You'll notice that I'm not going to wring out the garment because I don't want to mess with the integrity of the stitches. I don't want to stretch them or reshape them in any way. I just want to gently squeeze the water out. You can hear all that water that is in there. All I'm doing right now is lifting the garment up. I'm not even squeezing or applying any pressure, and there's just a ton of water in this garment from soaking. So even though a lot of water has come out, the garment is still holding on to a ton of water. So I'm just going to gently squeeze as much water as I can without stretching or manipulating the integrity of the garment or the shape of the garment. We're not wringing, we're not twisting, we're not pulling or stretching. We are simply squeezing that moisture out. Sometimes when you block, you'll notice that the water you soaked your garment in has changed in color. So this often happens with, for instance, black yarn or blue yarn or dark purple yarn. You can see this water is not really dark green like the garment, but it's not necessarily clear. You could totally reuse this water to block another item, but you do want to be mindful of color bleeding out when you are blocking. For instance, you wouldn't want to block a lighter yarn with a darker yarn because you want to make sure that the color is not going to bleed and transfer from garment to garment. Obviously, this wasn't an issue since this was the only garment I was blocking in this water bath, so there was no color transfer because there's no other color to worry about. What you're about to see may shock you, but I promise it'll be okay. This is not something I always did. When I first blocked, I would wring out the moisture as much as I could just with my hands, and then I would lay flat to dry. Then, after a long time of doing it that way, I adopted a newer method or a tweaked method, which was to lay a towel down flat, put my garment on the towel, roll up the towel, and then stomp on it and stomp out as much moisture as possible so it would be absorbed into the towel and not held in the garment. That worked just fine for me, but I found a different method that is less work and really effective. So now, again, this is going to be scary, but you don't have to be scared, I promise. Well, I won't promise, but you don't have to be scared. It'll be okay, okay? So just trust. I'm going to put it in my washing machine. This is an empty washing machine. There are no other clothes in here. I'm going to close the lid. I'm going to put it on my drain/spin cycle so there's no added moisture being put in this washing machine. There's no water that will be added, and I'm just going to push start. So what's going to happen in here is the spin cycle is going to go, and it's going to spin out as much extra moisture as it can that's left in the garment. So I know it seems scary, I really do, but I have never had an issue with this. This does not mean that issues couldn't happen. They certainly could. This might ruin your garment, but I've never had it happen to me, so I keep doing it. Maybe one day I will learn the hard way that this is not a foolproof method, but so far it's worked fine for me. I've done it with superwash and non-superwash alike, so if you want to give it a try, see, it's getting loud now. If you want to give it a try, I would definitely encourage you to do it. If you're nervous about it, maybe try something small, like a hat or even a swatch, and see how it goes before you do something bigger like a sweater like I'm doing. Okay, the spin cycle is done, so let's open it up, and it's perfect. It's not felted. For felting, you need heat and agitation. This is just agitation. No hot water is being added, no heat is being added. So this is a perfectly pristine sweater. It's just not as wet as it was when I put it in here. So the next step for the blocking process, I'm going to lay some blocking mats down and lay this flat to dry. So let's go do that. Blocking is one part of knitting that does require a few different tools, and they aren't totally cumbersome to store, but they do take up a little bit of space. So I'm gonna grab my stack of blue blocking mats. These purple ones are ones I've had since I first started blocking. These my mother-in-law gifted me for Christmas a few years ago. I'll link them in the video description box. But these are my preference because they're so thick and cushy, and they're just awesome. So these are my go-to blocking mats. So what you're seeing me do here is lay down the blocking mats on a flat surface. Any floor works fine. If you're concerned about moisture, maybe put it on some tile or some carpet, but mine is not going to be too wet since I put it in the spin cycle, so I'm not worried about any moisture transfer. So anyway, I'm laying these blocking mats flat to dry. You can see that they're numbered. If you care about that, you can make sure they're in order, but I guess I didn't care about that. So now I'm laying the garment flat to dry. You can use blocking pins, but I typically don't use blocking pins just because I am knowing that at least for this garment, I know I don't want to stretch it out. I know that it is fitting how I want it to, so I don't need to really do any aggressive blocking, and there's not like lace or a special edge or a special shape I need it to be in, so I'm fine just laying it flat to dry, and that is the process. So I've come back to the water after the suds have dispersed, evaporated, or whatever the correct word is, and the water is a bit green, so this is just evidence of why you would want to be careful with your blocking process and make sure that you're not mixing your lights with darks. just to make sure there's no color transfer. I never really know what to do with my water post blocking, especially when it has some dye in it. So if you have a go-to item that you use it for, I don't know if I could use it for cleaning since it's kind of green. I don't know if I could water the plants with it because of the wool wash in there. So I would love input on that if you have any ideas of how to use this water so it doesn't go to waste. Okay, I'm back. It has been a few days since I blocked this. When did I block this? Wednesday? Yeah, I blocked this on Wednesday. It's been dry for probably a day or two. Today's Saturday for reference. So another benefit of tossing your garment in a spin cycle for the blocking process is the dry time is significantly reduced. So you can already tell, at least I think so, you can already tell that there is a significant difference from how this looked and how the fibers were situated before the blocking process. Soaking it in water really just allows those fibers to relax and to fully bloom in order to give your garment, I don't know, a really nice polished finished look. I was trying to think of a good metaphor for the blocking process, and the closest thing I could come up with is if you're baking a loaf of bread, like a sourdough loaf of bread, and you do some scoring on the bread, which is like cutting pieces of the top layer open so it expands when it's in the oven. The loaf of bread will look beautiful or can look beautiful before you bake it, but it's baking it that really turns it from a lump of dough into this beautiful finished loaf. So that's not a perfect comparison, but that's the best I could come up with for now. So blocking is like turning your lump of dough into a beautiful loaf. So I don't know, think about that. I know that blocking is a very contentious thing. This is why I'm saying these comparisons and saying this is why I recommend it. People have knit for years who have never blocked a single thing. And if that works for you, by all means, do so. But I love blocking. I think that it takes my knits to just the next level, completely, totally, for sure. So blocking is the way to go, if you ask me. Whew. But you can see the yoke, the lace yoke has relaxed. The stitches are laying flatter. It's stretched where it needed to stretch. It's flattened where it needed to be flattened, and it is a finished piece. So my loaf of bread sweater is done, and I'm really happy with it. Other blocking strategies you can use are things like steam blocking, where you would use a clothing steamer or an iron and the steam feature on that to help relax the fibers. There are also different blocking methods you might use for different fibers. The soaking in wool wash, putting in a spin cycle and laying flat to dry is my go-to method because I typically am working with merino wool, superwash or non-superwash. This one is non-superwash, so keep that in mind. There's no felting that took place. It's totally fine, pristine, beautiful if I do say so myself, and the spin cycle did nothing to harm that. Now I will say, if you choose to block a garment or a hat or whatever using the spin cycle of your washing machine, you need to resolve yourself to the possibility that something could go wrong. Something could go very wrong. Maybe there's an end that you didn't weave in yet or you didn't snip yet, and it gets caught on part of the machine, and the agitation of the spinning makes your whole sweater unravel. I don't know. It has never happened to me, but that's not saying it will never happen. So please don't come here and say, Rachel, I did what you told me and my whole sweater is ruined and my life is over. And if that happens, I'm so sorry. But like, your mileage will vary, and proceed with caution and proceed at your own risk. For me, it's worked out fine. Hopefully it continues to work out fine, but there's just something to make sure you're aware of to, as with anything you see on the internet, on YouTube, you need to decide for yourself what you can live with doing. And if you can't live with the risk of the spin cycle, it is perfectly fine to wring out that garment as much as you can by hand, roll it up in a towel, stomp out the extra moisture, and move about your day doing that. So do what your heart tells you. You are the captain of your own ship, and that's all I have to say about that. So anyway, I hope that you liked this video and I hope it was helpful for you. You can give this video a thumbs up to support me. You can subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you're notified of my next upload. In the meantime, I'll have some other videos of mine you can enjoy until my next upload. And last but not least, if you don't already, you can head over to Instagram and follow me at Rachel is Knitting. And let me know how your blocking journeys go in the comments. I can't wait to hear about it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.